All right. So, in the second part of chapter 8, we start to look at graphs over time of the unemployment rate and start to disaggregate the unemployment rate into different categories. So, what we find over the last 70 years is that the unemployment rate hovers somewhere around 4 to 6%. It gets higher when we are in times of recession, and it gets lower when we are in economic expansions. Doesn't seem to be any trend of it getting higher or lower over time, even though visually it does look as if there's a slight upward trend. But statistically, if we look at the data, we can't find any specific statistically significant trend over time. So if we go ahead and break this down by men and women, we find that things have shifted a little bit. So in recent decades, the unemployment rate for men has been somewhat higher, despite the fact that historically, unemployment rates for men have been lower than the unemployment rates for women. So this is telling us that, not only are there more women joining the labor force, but the amount of women that are in the labor force actively looking for work is, all in all, smaller than men over the past 4 economic cycles, really, since the mid-1980s. When we split this up into ages, we find that, people that are going to high school are going to have the highest unemployment rate. Makes sense. Part-time workers. They've got sports and hobbies and all sorts of stuff, right? They're either going to high school or going to college. Then ages 20 to 24, we've got people that go directly into the labor force, and we've got people that graduated college and enter the labor force. So we get less of unemployment going on. And it gets smaller and smaller. If we split it up into different races and ethnicity, we can find some nice convergence. There used to be such a disparity between, white unemployment and Hispanic and Black unemployment. It is still, distinct and different, but it's not as distinct as it was before. So we do still see, typically lower unemployment rate for just white people in general. So when we're looking at, so we can compare our unemployment rate. So in economics, we either do two things, right? We either compare our rates over time, or we compare our rates to other countries. But with something like unemployment, we have to be really careful. So oftentimes the definition of unemployment is different. Some places might have it be, just being not employed makes you unemployed. Some places will say being not employed and being actively looking for, 6 months makes you not employed. Whereas, according to our current 12-week cutoff, that would mean that you're not in the labor force. So different definitions of unemployment are going to cause different percentages to emerge, despite the fact that the unemployment situation might feel or even be nearly identical in those two countries. Also, when we start looking at developing and emerging countries, a lot of times their statistical agencies just don't have the funding, right? They don't have the resources or technical capabilities to survey a large and diverse enough amount of workers and unemployed people to get an accurate measure of this, right? If in statistics, if you are sampling just, one or two subgroups, which oftentimes it's easiest to do because, these statistical agencies will be in cities. So it's, typically they have a real bias towards the cities and away from rural places just because they're harder to get to. So when we're looking at emerging and developing countries, we need to be sensitive to that. And then different labor markets. So, a lot of other countries, they have barter activity, subsistence activity, subsistence agriculture. There's a lot of informal economy work that happens in other places, right? Where, you'll have a relationship with somebody, but it'll be entirely verbal, and you'll go and get inventory from them that morning, and you'll sell it throughout the day, and then you'll, just deal in cash. So, according to the government, you're not paying any taxes on your income, but you're actually very employed. But it's an informal employment that's not being reported and not being taxed in the underground economy.